Many people have asked me why I planted trees. The Chinese have got a good saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is now. I wouldn't probably still be able to stay on this country if it wasn't for forestry. We don't want every tree everywhere, we want the right tree in the right place. Well, I'm Mark Warren. In 1984, I had the opportunity to take over management of a pretty large, rough, rundown block of land. In those days, it was all about sheep and cattle. Thinking laterally, I realised that there had to be other inputs to make it economically sustainable, financially, physically and emotionally. And 40 odd years later, without forestry, I don't think we would be here. We'd be struggling, but it means that with forestry and carbon and the other things, we've got an opportunity to carry on the next generation farming in a sustainable way and also to look after other members of the family on a fair and equitable basis. Sometimes we do get extreme droughts which really test your emotional, physical and financial resilience to the absolute maximum. It does tend to bring us almost to our knees at times. When I have my dark moments, I tend to wander around on the forestry and think, actually, at least this is probably making us $1,000 per hectare per year, or the larger one probably a lot more than that. A lot of the time when we look at a piece of land, I try to work out which country is highly productive, which is marginal and which is economically unproductive in livestock. And the stuff that's probably less than 4 stock units to the hectare, which basically is predominantly made out of slippy country and sheep tracks. We've proven in past experience that that's much better to be planted in production forestry. That's the country that stock go to die on, that's the country that four-wheelers get rolled on, that's the country that's hard to muster. It's not worth putting fertiliser on. Of course, droughts are pretty debilitating, but in 2011 we had a hell of a storm. We had about 500 mils of rain in about a day, and then we got an earthquake which shook it down the hills a bit. That didn't help a hell of a lot. And that was, took out of a lot of our fences, destroyed our infrastructure in terms of tracks, and that was a fair sort of headache. I think the total bill here was about $250,000 to get back up and running. But one of the benefits of the forestry, well, actually 2 benefits of forestry. One was that I was too scared to go and look, and my stock manager at the time went out and had a look and reported back to me. I said, how bad is it? And he said, it's quite simple. He said, the floodgates at the bottom of the forestry blocks are intact, but the floodgates at the bottom of blocks without any trees have all gone. The other benefit was actually at the time we were harvesting some trees, and that meant that we could actually finance repairing the fences and get back in shape again. It gave us some extra cash flow that we couldn't have got otherwise, so that basically kept us in business. And this last year, the big drought, we had a situation, we had a whole lot of R2 steers that we literally could not find a market for. So we put them into the forestry, we let them learn to eat blackberry and pine needles and a bit of odd grass. It was a bit of a Jenny Craig paddock, they lost a bit of weight, but in the spring they bounced back and they put on huge compensatory growth. And for that reason, that was very productive, not only for ourselves, but for the whole country in terms of export product available. Many people have asked me why I planted trees. The reality is that I had a huge interest bill, I had a huge debt to pay off, and I crunched the numbers, and I used to use a calculator probably more than my pocket knife, and I worked out that was the best way that we were going to stay in business. At the end of the day, our primary business is actually about owning land and holding on to it, because that's the best way to hold wealth. The other stuff's just cash and that can vanish. We're not all about production forestry. We have got a QE2 block that we've locked up to maintain that native diversity, and that also could be a seed source if we want to grow more natives in the future, and more so also to understand what trees grow here well and what don't. We've been here for 140 odd years now, and it'd be nice to think we're here for another 140. And the right tree in the right place is definitely part of our equation for having a long-term sustainable business.